Okay, hello and welcome to the msdynamicsworld.com Spring 2014 CRM webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is Henry McCallum, a veteran Dynamics CRM and XRM veteran who now leads Dynamics X Formations. Henry is a returning speaker for us, and I'm really glad to welcome him back for this dive into CRM 2013 Navigation. We've had a really good response to this session. We've got folks from a bunch of different countries on the line, and quite a few of them, so I'm really glad to get going here. As we get started, I just want to add that we invite you to add your feedback and ask questions during the session today. You can use the Q&A block that you see to the right of the slides to ask your questions, and I know Henry will make time to get to as many of those as possible. We'll also have a poll question coming up here soon. The other way you can ask questions or add your feedback is through Twitter. You can tweet at MSDWCRM, and we'll be watching that as well. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Henry McCallum. Henry.
Good day, everyone. How's everyone today? So I guess to get started today, the goal of today is actually, this is the first part of a potential two-session series. Purpose being to go over the modifications to the navigation for Dynamics CRM 2013, to identify and try and draw a relationship for those people who have used either CRM 4 or 2011, the current 2013 navigation and how it relates to what we're all used to, in order to give us a better feel for how it actually works and the concept of this new flat UI that Microsoft has presented. It is significantly changed, as anyone would know that has looked at it. It's a new paradigm for actual usability. Some would say it's geared directly towards the touchscreen user, and it is definitely made in such a way that it is enabled for better use by those who are either using a touchscreen and or a tablet type device. But it actually does provide some significant benefit and functionality to those of us that still like to click with the mouse. The issue is that the navigation structure is based on the same navigation that existed in 2011, so some of the things that we're used to seeing right in front of our face are not presented right at the top of the menus. And I say most of the stuff in this system now is based on, it's like reading a page. You start at the upper left and we read down to the bottom right. The way things are ordered and organized sometimes does not make sense for our business use, but it's actually based on the standards in CRM. Add to marketing list is always at the top of every action list, and 80% of people don't use the marketing list thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify and walk through the different areas of CRM and identify areas where you can optimize the 2013 interface, both in the navigation bars, the action bars, or the action areas, as well as look at the forms and how we can better utilize our forms now that the CRM forms are, more of a flow form than modular. At the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about doing an actual process audit, whereby it would we sit down and we look at a daily process that an employee uses or a worker uses, and identify what records they use most commonly, what actions they take more often, so that we can actually identify changes that we would want to make to the navigation. What we'll do in the second series is we'll show you a bunch of tools that we can use, such as the ribbon editor, that'll let us go in and change the toolbars, change the navigation, so that for our employee base or our staff, we can actually modify the system so that it provides them the ability to do their jobs within 1 or 2 clicks without digging deeper and deeper into these navigational items. It's quite beneficial to take the time to actually sit down with some of your key areas and actually walk through this audit, and we'll provide an Excel spreadsheet that you can kind of track that information with. It identifies some things, and we'll talk about that in the end. That being said, I had asked Jason to pop up a bit of a poll. I'm not sure if he got a chance to do that, whereby we just want to determine how many of you are currently using 2013, or how many of you are still on one of the older versions, and that'll help me kind of gear target of my conversation, whether it's to show what's going to be there or what is there and what we need to address. So I believe the poll has popped up. If everyone would take a couple seconds and just take a stab at that poll, that would be great.
All right. And we'll close that out in about another 5 seconds or so here. It looks like most folks are filling it out.
So the basis of the modifications to 2013 is, of course, as we've all seen with Windows 8 and other systems, is that Microsoft has really wholeheartedly bought into this new concept of changing the UI and the desktop interface. And as part of that process, they've actually gone out, and with many of their applications, they've gone and created this new flowing interface. Now, a couple key things that come right off the bat when you look at this interface is, as you can see, it works best on a wide screen. And that is because instead of forms and items flowing down, as they currently do with Internet Explorer and stuff like that, the concept is the information will flow across the screen. The wider your screen, the more real estate you have to process with. The CRM forms now have up to 3 columns, actually more than 3 columns. We use subcolumns, and all of that information actually spreads across from left to right, like I mentioned earlier. All right.
Henry, are you able to see the poll results?
Yep. So it looks like right now that we have we're about 35% using 2013, 38% using one of the older versions, or not using CRM at all. So it's actually a good thing. So I'll say at this point right now with that information, and it'll probably end up being about 50-50. If you have not gone to 2013 yet, which means you're on premise, prior to migrating to 2013, that audit process would probably be a great thing for yourself or your consultants to perform. Takes very little time. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we're going to talk about offering here is actually taking for the next session a current user or an attendee of the event right now, and actually taking and spending a little bit of time to walk through one of those audit processes with them, and then using them as the example next week or during the next session to actually, we'll go in and modify based on an export of their schema, their actual navigation to show you the difference between point A and point B. And this is something that Jason will talk about a little bit, I think, correct?
Yeah, that's right, and we can do that a few different ways.
We'll figure that one out. So, right off the bat, the first thing we notice is that it looks nothing like anything else we've seen in Dynamics CRM. The great thing is it doesn't look like anything we've seen in Salesforce.com or any of the other products. It is very graphical. There's the concept that there may be a little bit too much white space here, but in essence, if you think of what you're seeing on the screen right now, and that panel, there's a lot of information on there. There may be a lot of white space, but there is a lot of information presented in that screen. Why? Because we're using more of the real estate. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button there. All right, so taking a peek at the old version, we had our ribbon commands at the top. We had our navigation pane at the bottom, to the left. We had our areas, our functional areas, role settings, so on and so forth at the lower left-hand side. We had our main workspace. All of that still exists in 2013. It's how it's presented is different. We've gotten away from having navigation to the left and navigation across the top, and simply having navigation across the top that drops down and flows into sections, starting off with a nav bar and into the sub areas. All right. And the reason they've done that is that is basically taking up, 10%, 15% of the screen. All right. So here's what we have today. And as you can see, we're looking at basically the same information. I'm going to pop back to the other slide real quick, but presented a different way. So what we see at the top here, we see more room for information. There's more data and information. You'll notice at the top bar, that what they call the nav bar, across the very top is currently in its minimized format, and that is the default for CRM. And below that, we actually see the action bar. So the way the navigation bar works is very much the same as how it would work in the old version of CRM. Instead of it being on the left-hand side, where at the bottom lower left-hand side you'd see sales, service, marketing, settings, help, so on and so forth, it's now represented across the top, but only exposed when we actually select an item to cause it to appear. And that selection can occur based on a hover mode, if we simply take our mouse and hover it over an area, if we select the area by clicking on it, or if we have a touch screen and we simply touch the area with our finger. In this example, we're actually using the sales item here, and as you see, we click on sales or home, and we see our main navigation for our main areas. Again, the navigation bar items here that we see, sales, service, marketing, and settings, much like CRM 4 and 2011, those can be modified. Maybe we don't use service. Maybe we call it customer support. We may not use sales. We may call it relationship building. We can actually add to this by adding custom interfaces in here. So say we have an ISV or an enhancement we've done for organizations, such as fleet management or fleet tracking. The same as with CRM, with the prior versions, we can add that to this navigation bar. And it's actually added to the navigation bar in exactly the same manner as it was in the prior versions. CRM 2013 does not modify the sitemap structure of functions too much. There's minor changes, nor does it change anything having to do with the ribbon. It's how it actually represents it. And you'll see as we go through some of the stuff that we suddenly look like we're in the old interface when we're trying to make modifications, because it's still using the old functionality as the base. There are some areas that are updated, and we'll see there's some slick little features that they've added to make things a lot easier to use. The problem is, unless you know they're there, you have no idea they're there. All right. So, as we mentioned, the top bar is called the navigation bar, and it actually consists of two areas. It's actually the top-level navigation, or its minimized form, which has a couple of key features that never change. Based on what we select in that top section, we are then shown relations below. All right. So, if we look at the work area, our dashboards and stuff, we'll now notice that when we go to the navigation area, we will no longer see workplace. The workplace was an area that showed to the individual users predefined information such as dashboards, what key areas that they worked in. That is now gone unless you upgrade from a prior version. If you've upgrading from 2011 to 2013, you will still see workplace as one of these navigation items. Personally, I like having the workplace there, but again, it's not a default setting right now. What I'm showing here now is based on the concept we select on the Microsoft CRM logo. Basically, it's what they call under the hood. What we're seeing is our normal navigation bar items from the old design. So sales, marketing, service, settings, resource center. Resource center, by the way, is also gone now. And again, you can add other things to here. I mentioned earlier the fleet management. You can add in here whatever you may want. And that's simply activated by either, again, hovering over the Microsoft Dynamics CRM words and icon, selecting on it, or clicking on it. Again, the default areas that show are sales, service, marketing, settings, and help. The whole goal here is to try and keep people from getting, so they say, is to keep people from getting distracted. I'm kind of old school. I like having a really big monitor and everything densely packed with lots of everything exposed in one spot. That actually does exist with CRM 2013. Again, it's just identifying where the items are you're looking for and making sure they're configured in such a way that they meet the needs of my organization. Things are in the right order. So we just spoke about the selecting over the Microsoft CRM logo. You can also click on the home button, what the home button does is it takes you back to your specific settings. It's almost like Workplace. So when you used to be able to open up Workplace and it would open up your default entity, whether it's contacts or accounts or dashboards, that same function occurs simply by hovering over or selecting the home icon, which we see at the top, right here. All right. Now, the other thing that shows across the top of the navigation bar is the secondary area, which is the dashboards and stuff. Now, that's a default that will always show. So you'll always see the home, you'll always see the Microsoft CRM, you'll always see the dashboard word and some other items to the right that I'll talk about in a minute. What will change is the item in the middle, which we see here as sales. That is set in your options. It is much like in the old Workplace mode. Where is my default? Where do I drop to? So I'm a service rep. So by default, when I launch CRM, I see Dynamics CRM, I see my little house, and I see service. That just makes it so it's quicker for me to get to where I need to be. An example, by the way, of some of the things that occur at this top level bar is anywhere you see the little caret on the right-hand side, the selection drop-down, what that does is that opens up the options at that level for that item. The example we're showing here is for dashboards. So if we touch on the dashboards or we click the drop-down to the right-hand side, the little down arrow, we will see the dashboards that were recently viewed. Okay. So that's one of those quick little neat features that Microsoft threw in there is the concept of the selection arrow. Basically what that is defined to do is, by default, show me my most recently viewed items of that entity or relationship, i.e. dashboard, so we're seeing sales activity and customer service dashboard at the lower item, or my default items. So if we clicked on sales, drop-down arrow, we would see sales, service, marketing, centers. That's the default.
Hey, Henry, would this be a good time for a couple of questions that have come in?
Let's just let's get through the what's under the hood here, what's under the house and stuff. So we'll get the level at the top level nav bar, and then we'll jump into the questions because yeah, it's probably a great time. All right.
All right.
So again, this is actually the last slide in regard to that. So here we're talking about, again, the whole concept of that house. If I click on the home bar, it's going to take me back to my default settings. By default, the dashboards for sales are shown as the default for everyone. So basically that takes us back to slide number 1. If I click on that, oops, one more. I'm coming back here. All right. All right. The other areas, the dashboard stuff, again, shows the related dashboard. And what we'll do is we will stop at this point and take some questions. How does that sound? Let me look at my questions here. Okay.
All right. So you'll actually see these in your chat area there, Henry. So if folks want to send questions in, please use the Q&A block, or if you're going to send a chat, make sure it goes to all panelists so that Henry will see those. But the first one here, let me make sure I'm getting the first one. Would you recommend creating a solution with nav changes to use as a starting point in new 2013 instances?
That's from James. So James, there's actually been some work done by some of the partners out there. There's a group called CRM Extreme on LinkedIn, as well as I think it's the CRM user group. The young lady who runs that organization has actually created a default solution that actually takes some of the things and actually copies them over so that you have a starting point for 2013. And there's a reason for that. There are certain items that do not migrate correctly up from 2013. They don't exist, and that has to do with the concept of allowing it to continue to support modifications to the entities in navigation. So I can do some research, or we can by the next session I'll look into that. So I'll save this question and I'll provide some guidance on that. But there are, and this is just basically come out of the pain and difficulties of some of the upgrades. I personally have done about 10 2011 and actually 2 CRM 4 to 2013 upgrades in the past couple of months, as well as did some of the preliminary work with that. And we did notice that certain things are not by default set accurately. Custom navigation for actions for custom entities where you may have, make a phone call, add a note, and so on and so forth. They completely do not come over. That may have been changed in the latest update. I'm not sure about that. So, yeah. All that being said, concisely, there is a recommendation for creating a starting point solution. The other thing, too, basically, with the navigation is everything in the navigation for the tools that we've talked about are actually done as solutions, so they can be rolled back. So that does make it easier. And let's see, next question, Debbie. In regard to is this presentation being recorded, the actual PowerPoint presentation, I'm not sure, the actual presentation is not being recorded. The PowerPoints will be made available, and we can actually, I can, with a pretty short period of time, add some repeated verbiage to it. Probably a lot more concise than my ramblings right now.
The session is being recorded, though.
Oh, it is recorded? Okay, great. So there you go. There you go, it is. Maybe I should stop talking now. Okay, so then James mentions that navigation bar is so difficult to use if there are more items than will fit in the sub area without scrolling. Do you suggest many areas or fewer sub areas? That's a really interesting question, and it's actually a conversation I had with a potential client yesterday. They have a lot of customizations, and they've talked about going with increasing the number of items in their sub area. I don't know if that's the way to go. And the reason being is because of the new, role-based forms and the different forms that you can use, you can actually modify navigation for each form so that when it comes to the actual action items that appear on forms, they can be actually modified based on the user role. And that's part of the concept of the audit. If I have a telemarketing person who does not do, call scheduling, I can set up a specific action bar for that user on a specific form for them, whereby another group that does all of the scheduling, I can actually provide additional functions across that toolbar item. The concept of the scroll bars and the action items we'll show later is it basically by default shows 5 items across the top. For the higher level nav and sub areas, it will show as many items as you have. It just scrolls across left to right. That's where optimization becomes important, because we need to make sure that we make sure on the very left items, the first to appear, are those things I use more often. And the Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to let everyone use if they want to do this little review of their processes, you actually identify, what are the 5 actions that I use most often? Number 1 being the most often, number 5 being the least often. What process do you use most often? Number 1, number 5, and so on and so forth. So many areas with fewer sub areas, that's something you really have to look at and how they divide. The concept, of course, is starting at the highest level and working down in almost a pyramid fashion. So we start off at 1 at the top, 5 at the bottom, and 10 below, and so on. So I mentioned the Resource Center is gone. It's just renamed Help. It has a title Customer Center when you land on it. Yeah, that's interesting. That does not exist if you do that does not exist on new 2013 installations. If you go out and launch a brand new CRM 2013 instance with a whole new Office 365 account, it's just not there. It does exist when you do an upgrade from 2011 or CRM 4. To the best of my knowledge, originally it was supposed to be gone completely, and what it was supposed to do is simply drop you out to Pinpoint. All right. Mark asked the question: will this part of the presentation, this series is almost all PowerPoint. The next session, when we actually go and start making the modifications, is really going to be the hands-on, where we're going to go and take an example of And we'll use an example here. We'll use this example where we'll take a chance and we'll make a modification where we have a larger number of sub areas compared to the parent areas, and see how that all works out. But most of this is going to be a PowerPoint for today. So, any other questions?
There's one more down in the Q&A block there, and are you able to see that?
Yep. You absolutely can remove, if you do an upgrade, you can definitely remove those items. You can remove any of the items that you want. Basically, that is just simply using the sitemap editor, which is the same as existed in CRM 4 and 2011, to move those or modify them. So that can be done. I think we got that one. All right. So
I think that's it.
We're gonna,
and a couple of folks are asking when is that next webinar. So if I could just jump in, it is on Wednesday, May 14th at the same time.
And again, if you have a if you currently have, whether it's 2011 and or you're up on 2013 and you're running into some difficulties whereby your users are saying, I can't find. I make phone calls all the time, and I click on my contact record, and I have to click down and drop down to the right-hand nav and go to the extra things to try and find my phone call or my workflow that I use all the time. You'd probably be a prime candidate to take advantage of that little review session that we'll do with you. And again, the benefit to you is that we make some modifications for you and provide them back to you, but we get to use you as an example for the next session. Again, not using your data, but just using your structure. So that's something to keep in mind. Good. All right. Now,
I think we're through the questions. Yeah.
Yep. So we're going to second. Now we're going to get into a little meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So the concept of left to right, down, down, down on the page comes into effect pretty much right after this, and that's the concept of how do I find the records I need to do my work with. Now, this is actually a Microsoft slide set that I've modified, and they use the term pop-down here. You're no longer allowed or supposed to use the term pop-up or pop-downs as part of the flat UI, because we don't do the pop-ups and pop-downs anymore. Everything is in the same UI now, and that's really the concept of this. CRM in the past had a lot of modal windows and then smaller windows that would pop up, so I'd click on an item and another window would pop up and another window would pop up. So next thing I know, I had 4 either tabs or frames open in Internet Explorer. CRM 2013, the concept now is it keeps it all within the same pane or focus point. There's a big plus to that, and there's a big minus to that. The big minus to that is it's very difficult. It's not as easy now to say have 2 screens up where I have my contact screen on the left and my account screen on the right. You have to sort of do that right click and open a new window functionality. And that does not work for all sub areas because it needs to have the top level navigation record exposed. And that has a lot to do with the consistency of functioning under both Chrome, Safari, and all the other products now. Which, by the way, if anyone has not actually used Dynamics CRM on some of the other interfaces besides Internet Explorer, it works shockingly well. So that being said, we're going to talk now about the next level of what they call the sub-area and group area. So basically similar to in the past when we had our sales, service, marketing settings, and we clicked on sales, what we next saw was our work areas. And what our work areas or groups were, and you'll see across the very top of those items, you'll see customers, sales. Those are the groupings. That's legacy stuff that they pull from the old navigation, and it's just a way of grouping what can be seen on that second tier of records, which is the actual entity records. The benefit of these groupings is that those groupings can be used as part of security and configuration, so that you can say by default, user group A does not see the My Work items, so they wouldn't see dashboards. They wouldn't see activities. Not that we'd want them not to see activities, but you can configure those at that group level without having to go down and say shut off dashboards, shut off activities. It just gives you an additional level of functionality. Right. And we'll notice as we go into this, we see all the items, similar contacts, leads, opportunities, competitors. Here's where it gets interesting, because it's the order of these things that these items represent are the default order in CRM unless you've made a modification. That order may not be beneficial to you. I may not ever want to see when I click on sales my dashboards to the left of my activities. What I want to see is I want to see accounts first, I want to see contacts second, I want to see opportunities third, then I want to see activities. I never use competitors, so let's get rid of that. This is all part of that optimization, is to get rid of the things you don't need and then make the items that you use most often the very leftmost items. The reason for that is we no longer go down in navigation, we go to the right. As we'll see, there's a little arrow to the right there. Selecting that will pan through that whole item. If you're using a touch screen, it's simply the swipe. Finger on the left-hand side, over to the right, and that's whether it's on a tablet or a touchscreen monitor. As you go forward and start investing in new equipment and stuff like that, touch screens are the way to go. They're, you know, $50 to $100 more for a widescreen touch screen. But if you have people working at workstations and they use CRM 2013 a lot, they may actually see some benefit from actually going with the touch screen. The mouse still works, but it's obvious that things are changing there. All right. So as we look at the navigation here, we're going to compare it to the old navigation. So what we see when we go into the sales is it's the same thing as if we were on the old system on accounts. We click accounts, as you can see right here. Accounts is the item that we're on. All right. These are the related items below it. And those items relate to our left nav navigation. All right. So all we're doing is taking things and dropping them down and flattening them out. All right. We also have that cool little functionality here that at any point in time, if we click on that little flyout or the V on the right-hand side of any one of those records, we will see the most recently viewed items. That's really critical. Not critical. It's a big benefit if you keep using, work with the same records all the time. You don't have to go searching for them. Some people use a view. I would still continue to use a view that shows my records, but I would know that these are the ones that I just worked on recently, and that's on any item. I simply select the drop-down arrow, the little caret, and it's going to show me the last used items. Now, the last used items that appear are reset every 24 hours on CRM Online, I believe. So if you log off and you log back in, and it's within a 24-hour cycle, those recently viewed items will no longer be there. It clears that cache. On-premise installations, it stays as long as the CRM server is up and running. You shut down your CRM server, reboot it, the recently viewed items will disappear, and if you log out, they'll disappear. Okay. Now, a couple other things to talk about real quick on the navigation bar. So we already talked about clicking on the Microsoft CRM logo, what happens when we click on home, what happens when we click on our default items, including the carrots to the right, and then the actual navigation point of accounts. This is actually a breadcrumb trail. You'll notice it goes sales, accounts. When we open up an actual contact or an account record, we'll see the name of the account, Datacom or Microsoft Corporation there. So it gives you sort of a breadcrumb trail as you're going through CRM, and you can click back through that trail to go back up in records. The points I want to show here are a couple of, I think this is one of the best features of CRM 2013, let's just put it that way, and that is the ability to create quick create forms. And what a quick create form is that for each and every type of entity in the system, including activities, you can create a short and sweet pop-up. I hate to use that word, but this is definitely a flyout, we'll call it, that allows you to enter only the required fields that you need to save that record. That's very important when you're doing things such as adding a contact for an account, it's coming from an email and you don't want to go popping around and doing things, you just need to get the contact name in and save it. That is actually available at any point in time. You can simply click on the plus create button at the top, and it will show you a list of all entities, and it actually shows out, and I'll open this up a little bit, in this actual fly bar at the bottom. You'll notice the activities are shortened, the little red items, and then we have our account records. Now again, here's where we fall into a situation. How many people actually use competitors? It's not a very popular, competitors and campaign response are not very popular. So when I create the navigation for my quick creates, I probably want to put, again, accounts, contacts, opportunities, you know, activity response, whatever it may be, in an order in such a way so that what I see to the left are the most popular items. This does not belong at the very most item on the left-hand side, the competitor. Other things you can do off the top level navigation bar, whether it's in an expanded form or simple, the blue bar compressed, is you can sign out. Some people don't think that there's anything special about that, but sign out is actually something you could not do easily in the old version of Dynamics CRM, especially if it was you know, online. The other area that you can do, which is number 3, is the actual little, this is a new Microsoft sort of standard, whether you're using Office 365 or any of the new Microsoft products, that's the gear. What the gear does, that exposes your personal options. So this is where you can go in and set your number of, click on that and you can say, you know, I want to see 250 rows in every one of my views. Here's my default currency, so on and so forth. That can all be set here. All right. It also lets you run a print preview. I'm not sure if everyone knows what print previews are, but they're sort of a one-pager for whatever record you're on. It's kind of like a cool little stat sheet. I'm amazed in the past when I've clicked on a little Dynamics CRM logo and done a quick print for someone. It's like basically a one-pager on that record, you know, with all the basic information on there that salespeople like to take out on the road with them. People were writing reports and it already existed. You can also open the navigation tour. By the way, I suggest that anyone that is out on CRM or gone into CRM is open up the navigation tour. It'll explain a lot of this stuff over again. She's a lot prettier and has a nicer voice than I do, but that's about it. And then the about. About basically shows you the CRM instance that you're in and information about that instance. One other area to just talk about real quick that is not shown here, and this is something new recently. If you're using CRM Online and you have over 25 users, you now have the right and access to a free sandbox tenant. So you can actually create a secondary version of your product, of your solution, and do your modifications in there, update your site maps and your navigation in that sandbox tenant without affecting your production environment. If you're in that environment, an orange bar will appear at the top of your navigation, basically saying you're in sandbox mode, so you know that you're in the other system. That did not show in the past, and you had to kind of figure out looking at the name and stuff. Okay. Now, one of the things that I noticed right off the bat first using CRM, there is no quick find at the top of any of the forms. So I can't simply type in dynamic exclamations and actually start to find that record, whether it's an account or a contact. That unfortunately does not exist any longer. But later on we talked about the keyboard shortcuts, because there are still the ability to use keyboard shortcuts here. You'll see that there is actually something called striking the space bar that should pull up your search, depending on where you are. All right. So basically, how do we find records nowadays? So we go to our nav bar, we decide where we want to go. We want to go to sales, we're going to go to contacts, and when we click on contacts by default and just hit that, select that contact tile, not selecting the lookup for recents, it will drop me into my default list view. If you're using Outlook, the Outlook client, by default, when you select on contacts, the list view is what you see, because that's how CRM represents everything out in the read form. Actually works really, really cool. It's 2013 in the list views in the Outlook client are really cool because of the categorization and colors and stuff that you can do. It's a lot. It's matured greatly. All right. So again, if we were to select on any other item, whether it be leads, click on it, we'd see our active leads. And again, that's all based on your permission to see those records. So the same standards in 2011 in CRM4, where I didn't have the ability to read contacts, I would not see this actual navigation item. So if I couldn't see contacts, that's not how it looked, but I'm trying to show you something. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where the navigation gets to be a little bit of a problem. When we are working in our actual records base, whether it is in our views or actually at the record level, what we see across the top bar is what they call the action bar, and that is basically the functions and processes we can perform on that record, or in the case of a list, those records, the order in which those items represent themselves, and by default you only see 5 across the top, which is at the actual top level. All right. That is defined based on the actual identification numbers of those items within the actual computer code. Thankfully, new and delete are at the top, but by default, we have in all list views, copy, sorry, my bad. In all list views, copy link, email link, those are going to show up on as the second 2 items. Those are never used or hardly ever used. I'm not sure how often you email links of multiple contacts to each other. Luckily, the report is still there. This is an area where we pretty much look at our views as part of that audit and say, okay, so when I'm in a list view for my contacts, what I usually do is I have, schedule phone calls, I have add to quick campaign, and I have some other items that are my more important items that I need to show as those first 5 items. I can also see by using what they call the more actions items, which are the 3 ellipses right here, it will show me the remaining items and activities that are exposed for that record type or that view type. But here's the problem. As you see, again, looking at this example from my account, email a link, delete, form, share, run workflow, start dialogue. How about make a phone call? How about send marketing literature? How about those things I really do more often with a contact or with an account? Those need to be, exposed up front. How often do I make a connection? Not very often. Most people do not use, marketing lists regularly. So we need to find the other items, the other 2 items that we use more often, and get them up to top level. That allows me to simply expose my contact record, see the information I need in that record, and we'll talk about optimizing form. I saw that comment, by the way, that we use email link a lot. It is a very powerful thing that a lot of people do not use, but it's great for communicating information about records within your group. Again, back to the situation. So we'd want to identify those items that we'd want to place at the top. All right. Some people actually remove the new button completely from here because, keeping in mind, at all times, you will always see above this, over here to the right, that little quick add button. So I can always click on that at any point in time and add a new account, add a new contact. So why waste the navigation space by having it up there? All right. So here's the unofficial terminology used for the Microsoft activity ribbons. The command bar. I need to correct myself. I did not say activity bar. It's actually command bar. So the first level of the 5 items is called the flyout. The second level, which is the ellipses, that is called the overflow area. Okay, so we have our command bar, we have our overflow area, which is the ellipses, We then have our flyout menu for overflow. So that's any menu item that has a selection area or a series. You get a flyout menu in an overflow area. And it's basically a submenu. There is a third level to the overflow, and that is if you have certain items that are inactive or they're marked as active only for certain record types, they will show in a third level, very similar to where it says run on current record. It just moves everything over to the right. The maximum number of levels you can go down is these 3 levels with that last flyout overflow for a menu selection item. The number of items that can be shown in the overflow is, I believe, 20. That's actually supposed to change. It was actually the first initial upgrades of 2011 to 2013 on CRM Online. You could actually add as many items as you had the ability to in that, and it would just give you a scroll bar down the side. It is now capped at, I think, 20. But again, you should optimize what you want to see along your items to the left. You know, as we know, the follow and share, they're new or more popular now in the new version and probably we used more. Excuse me. So here's just an example of some of the differences in the default navigation, command bars that appear. So if I'm looking at a contact for a contact view, I have new, delete, copy a link, email, run a report. By the way, run a report, for those people that did the 2011 to 2013 upgrades for on-premise, you may have noticed that that did not show up and you had to kind of go and dig for it. The latest update actually fixes that and puts that back at the top of the lists. All right. We then go into the actual record level for a contact, or excuse me, there's an opportunity, and we'll see that we have a different series of command items. Save a new, delete, close in one, close is lost. You know, for opportunities, delete, I would not put that up there. Also, so you're aware, if in your rights that you set up for your role-based security, the user that is looking at this record here does not have the delete record functionality, this item will disappear in the more listing of additional commands. It will left justify those commands so that whatever the first one was in that additional drop-down will now be the 5th item showing on the top line. So again, role-based, you know, the security and people's access rights does come into play with the actions or command bar. We talked about the breadcrumb area earlier. So we have sales, accounts, and a name. The great thing about the breadcrumb functionality and the drop-down or selection tab is that I can always go back up to my top-level bar, go to accounts or whatever I was on, including sales, click on that left nav and see the most recently viewed items. All right, and that'll drop me right back into where I was going. Now this becomes important because by default CRM 2013 does not support nor want me to have open multiple windows at one time. So I don't want to have a contact, you know, Betty White contact record open at the same time that I have, you know, an account record open. They want you to kind of navigate and keep everything on one screen. Oops. Okay. So that also goes into the next level of functionality, which is the final real level of the account records or contact records. So if I'm in an actual record, whether it be a contact or an account, there is an additional level of navigation that occurs. And again, this is not a command bar or action bar. This is actual navigation. So if I'm on an account record and I select the account record name, either hover over it or select it, or pick the little down arrow again, the flyout menu, I will then see the related items, related record items, which are, again, the same as the old related items in CRM Navigation. They are defined and configured the same way. So if you're used to using the CRM customizations to go in and address forms and the navigation on a form, this is how it'll happen. This is another area where it's important to kind of define the order that you want them in. You will notice that it does not follow a standard pane. Even though in my normal statings, and this is default here on the left-hand side, my comment under the related, common, more addresses, activities, closed activities, sub-accounts, contacts, relationships, under the common grouping. Under my common grouping here, notice I only say activities, contacts, documents, and audit. It does not match what's in here, and the reason being is it's either security roles are defined, relationships aren't shown, and or it is putting them in the order that the actual, so the GUID ID number is in numerical order. Another area where you should really give consideration to changing, so that if we are looking at our account record, when I pop up my related entities, immediately what I want to see is activities, very important. I want to immediately see my opportunities, audit history, put it at the end, documents, put them at the end. Documents is an interesting thing too to keep in mind with navigation, because how you configure your system is going to show you a different way of seeing navigation. You're either going to see the SharePoint site location, or you're going to see the documents, and that's a trick you have to make sure you configure correctly. Future session. So again, old design, new design. So the concept is we have our action bar, toolbar across the top, command bar across the top. That's no longer here. It's actually below me. All right. And we have our related entities. Again, that quick create is always there, so we can always click on it and quick create. So keep trying to save the space on the screen and get rid of that new button. All right. So I'm just going to do a real quick review, and then we'll open up for some more quick questions, and then we'll go through the last little section here because we're getting really close on time. So basically, the way it works is that for our top level navigation, which is the top nav bar, that relates to our old CRM 4.0 in 2013. All right, areas. For the selections below that, or sub areas and groups, that relates to our top level sales area navigation. So we'd see sales in these items. So that's nav level 2. All right. The third item and level that we go into, and that's only when we're selected on a specific record, is the related entities. And that's what we just showed. All right. And that's actually called, this is called nav, this is called sub area, excuse me, this is called nav, this is called sub area group. Sub area group. This is called sub area related. And I'll fix these up before the presentation goes out and actually put it in. Horrible. All right. And then when we get into the actual records or the views, that's when we see the ribbon bar across the top, which becomes our action bar. Now, again, the way that action bar exposes itself is it goes in the order that the items are shown here by default. All right. Across the whole line, and notice these are grayed out here because we don't have rights to them. They won't even appear in 2011 or 13 navigation. Okay. So once you get the concept of what used to be on the left is now floating down from the top, and it floats down from the top based on the lower left up, and displays in 2013 from the top left down. All right. So let's open up to real quick questions, then we'll bang through this other.
All right. Well, we got several questions in the queue right now, Henry.
Okay. So,
first,
yeah, Martin is the first question. What version of 2013 is this from? So this is actually pin next to. Oh, okay. Okay. So this is actually from the original release of 2013. Which was the first rollout of the CRM Online. So yes, we are missing the pin, and that's a very important item. Real quick, to drop back to something, at any point in time, if we're looking at a record, okay, for the record here, we can pin records to have them stay in the favorites, or excuse me, if we click the pin item, which looks like a little standard push pin you see in all Microsoft products, that item will remain in your drop down for your recents. Correct. The quick search is now at the top on the right. The quick search is re-exposed. That actually in the older version here can also be exposed by simply hitting the space bar, and it'll pop open. And we'll see that when we get to the end. And you'll see that that actually shows, there's a couple of keyboard tricks that are actually quite cool that you can run real quick and it'll actually take action for things. So that's basically it. So quick search is now there. There's some limitations to quick search now, by the way. I don't think it goes down. You have to modify the values and stuff like that to get it to work on a lot of items if you do an upgrade, but there's tech support information out there. Universal search developed by an MS partner. So there's a couple of universal searches out there. Theoretically, how you would expose those on the CRM 2013 form, I do not know. I'm sure they're updating them to 2013, so I would check with their tech support group. There's a bunch of there's about to be a whole new wave of tools coming out for CRM. XRM Toolbox is getting a refresh with a lot of stuff. There's some other products out there, and we'll talk real quick at the end about some of those. I want to rock through this because I know we're really close on time. Okay, so we got the recording. All right, so we're going to jump back in here real quick. I'm sorry, we may actually go about 2 or 3 minutes over here. Real quick, benefits of CRM is to take advantage. One of the things that you should also consider doing is optimizing your CRM forms. There's a lot more real estate available. There's a lot more functionality with using related entities. So if you're a person whose job is to make phone calls, schedule appointments, and add tasks or items to something, that all of those areas should be exposed on your form so you are never clicking off of this form to do your job. All right? Everything you need to act upon should be exposed to the top in the way of your actions. Every area that you need to act upon should be exposed on the form. And again, you should audit that and look at that. A great example is I have a client who actually goes out and they schedule deliveries and moves. One of the roles of the telemarketer is to call and confirm the schedule. As part of that, she has to create activities for them, but also there's a related entity called fleet assignment that she has to update all the time. So right now she flips between 2 screens to go, okay, here's the organization, I got to add a new fleet assignment. So let me go look and see what's in the area. All of that is now exposed on her front form. She does not leave her screen, her one screen for anything. They actually also use a different, not Skype or Link, but they use a different tappy phone program, so everything runs off the system. All right. For those items that you add to the area, you will also have a sub-command bar. An example is something called a social pane, activity pane, whatever it may be. Is basically they're taking activities and notes, which is both current activity and past activities, and put them into one pane, as well as the posts, which are called the feeds. Interesting concept. It kind of makes navigation a little weird because it kind of takes a lot of space up on a form. But you'll notice when you're in there that you have the ability to create actual action items from the sub. So if I'm in a post and I'm doing an activity, I can actually go in and add a phone call, add a task, or one of the other items. Now you'll notice that those what they call pane command bars, there's only 3 items exposed because of space limitations. You can do that with related records as well. So that's very important to kind of take advantage of. All right, process view, I'm not really touch on that. You can now, in most of the forms, actually add and edit inline, so you don't have to go out and open up the function. Okay. and the records are saved automatically. You'll notice now at the very lower hand right-hand corner there's a little save button. You can save it automatically. That functionality is now, you can disable that functionality if you have plugins and stuff that are running that you need to make sure that doesn't work. Real quick, for some people that have an older version of CRM, or excuse me, an older upgrade and have gone up to the current release and you're on-premise, you will not find your reports listed as part of the command bar in a list view. So you have to actually drill down to sales, go all the way down to the right until you get to reports. Again, that's something you can probably move all the way to the left if you want. And you will notice some people will not have that run report button. So that's how you find it. Okay. Advanced Find is another item that is not exposed as part of everyone's default toolbar or list bar. That's one that I would suggest putting at the top. And I'm rushing through this, and I apologize, everyone. We're a minute over. Real quick, as part of the takeaway from this, and I'm not sure how Jason's going to provide it, there are a number of CRM shortcuts, that's keyboard shortcuts that are really quite powerful and functional. One of those is the ability to actually use the space bar to launch a search. So if you don't see search up there, you hit a space bar because you're not in any section or item. It will open up the search dialog. All right. And some other ones. There's about 30 of them. I provided an Excel spreadsheet to Jason with that information on it. I've also provided a copy of this spreadsheet right here. It looks colorful and cool. But this is basically a walkthrough or an audit item where you can have your staff who sit down actually write down what they do, the basic process. So my process is scheduling fleet deliveries. And normally I work with a contact and a fleet record. All right. And then I just simply say, do I use a view to find it? I just answer these questions here and then go out and do relationships. So what activities do I access as part of this process? So I do emails, I add them, I delete them, so on and so forth, and I mark my items, and then I just give an item classification. So this I don't do often, so this is a 5, this is a 2, a 3, and a 1. We then use that information to identify what commands we need to make sure that for the fleet item, we show email, phone call, schedule service activity, and task or activity as the first 5 items across the left nav, across the command bar. Again, exposing what this person's role does at that point in time. We then go and do the same thing with identifying related records so that we can create as part of that related record item that we want accounts, contacts, fleet item, so on and so forth as our first 5 items across the left so that when we open up the drop-down navigation or the flyout, it's quick and easy to get to. All right. Site navigation. All right, so here's just basically real quick some tools that we're going to use next time around. We're going to talk about how we use the site map to change our navigation. We are going to use the actual navigation modification functionality within CRM to change our related entity lookup so that we want to make sure that we show activities, contacts, and accounts first. Again, that's all standard CRM stuff that we'll show and we'll work through next week or in the next session. We'll also show some functionality that's provided by third parties. Develop One has created a ribbon bar toolkit that lets me do some great changes to the ribbon bar and actually change the order of items that show and also expose more of those items so that I can see everything that I need as part of my navigation. It's a great tool. We'll use that as part of the navigation rebuild. All right. We'll also show some other tools such as this easy navigation tool, which basically gives you the functionality of loading a graphical interface that shows all of the items that you are, by the way, Ventes is sales, all of the things that you are, I didn't believe I did this in French, that's pretty bad, I'm sorry. All of the items that you're exposed to immediately, right from the top so you don't have to go switching around. All right. And we'll also look at using something called Quick Navigation, which is, unfortunately, very Salesforce.com, which basically gives us the ability to create a small hyperlink selection across the bottom with our common work area. So for each user, we can say, these are the common navigation records that I always do for my related. When I click on that, it'll open up my related accounts. I can open up my summary, my details, whatever we may need. We can create this little navigation trail at the bottom. It's just a quick way of getting through it. We will also talk about how we should use form navigations to do things such as adding items that we utilize or related entities that we utilize all the time to the actual form for the parent record. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're 5 minutes over. I apologize for that. Again, hopefully this has given you some insight and overview to what the navigation in 2013 is, where it's going. We really, I would suggest that to everyone take a little, if they're going to join us for the next session, is to maybe sit down with somebody in their office and actually work through a real quick, look at 2013, whether it's on a demo environment or whatever, and identify areas that you need to change. So, okay, because of the way we do business, we don't use quick campaigns, and we do use our email hyperlinks, and we do use this, and these are the 5 items that I use most often every day on a contact form. These are the 5 items or actions I take most often every day on an opportunity. Just write those down, jot those down. We can throw those out at me next time, and we'll go through and we'll actually show the actual tools that we can modify those items with. I'll let Jason handle how we determine if we're going to pick somebody that wants to volunteer to have one of their entities reviewed and modified. Probably take about an hour's time on their part to just walk through it, probably an hour's time on my time to make the modification. And what we'll do is we'll do that in a demo system so that when we expose it, when we work with it next time around, we're not showing any of your data, we're not showing anything except the old, and now this is how we modified it to work. Again, the concept is flat UI. We want to keep everyone on one screen. We want to provide all of the actions and all of the related record functionality on one screen. We do not want to have them popping out or going to look for other records. Everything should be in front of them with the ability to roll back to their most common records that they need to work with.
We'll have, and Henry, just to add to that, so we'll have 2 ways that you can express your interest in that audit. One is when you close out of today's session, you'll see a little survey, and if you want to add a comment in there at the bottom that you're interested, we'll see that. The other thing is to look for an email coming to all of you as a follow-up to the session with the info on how to get the materials and on what's coming next time. So look for that. You can respond to that email, too, to let us know if you're interested.
Yep. So there's real quick there's 2 quick comments, too. From Allison, yeah, Power Objects, Power Global Search. I actually use that for one of my clients, and it does show up as a tile on the nav bar. They're making a modification to that. They're trying to get Microsoft to let them, that top level nav bar where we have our Create button and our, our Home button and our Microsoft. There's a lot of real estate up in there that's not used. Some products actually are taking advantage of, there's 3 other sections in there that we don't see that are not used by Microsoft right now. Power Objects is probably going to add their search to that top level ribbon, which will be great because it'll be sort of box you type it in. Great product, great people over there at Power Objects. Inline product update. So Martin made a quick comment that it only works on certain entities. It does not work for all entities. That is true, and the reason being is certain things such as the product, such as the price list, such as the order and the quote, they have not been updated to the new release, so they do not support the inline edit the same way. Another area that you might notice if you used the very first release of CRM 2013 compared to now, the address box, which is now a combo selection box. You used to be able to copy and paste like 3 lines of text, so you had your street address, your city, state, and zip. You could copy that whole block and just paste it into that little address box, and it would parse it out much like it does in Outlook. That doesn't do it anymore. Not sure why. It was actually in the beta releases for 2013. Did not exist in production, but it was exactly like Outlook. You could just cut and paste an address in or cut and paste a name in, and it would automatically parse out the first name, last name. They're not, for some reason, doing that right now. So that's it, I think. Yep.
Okay, we'll end it there. We'll give also a review and see if there are any other questions that we didn't get to, and if so, we'll find a way to get those answered for you as well sometime after the live event here. So thanks again, Henry, for taking the time to present to us today. I've had some great
My
feedback.
pleasure.
I really appreciate your time. Yeah, and thanks everyone for being on the line today. Again, for tons of great questions. We hope to see you again on the follow-up session in a couple weeks. And we did record today's session. We'll make it available very soon and alert you via email. So thanks again. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day.